The salt plain does not rise to meet you. It simply waits. From above, it looks like a sheet of pale glass laid flat across the world, endless and clean, broken only by faint seams where salt has cracked and reset itself in the heat. The late light turns it brighter than it should be, bright enough that the horizon blurs, bright enough that the sky seems to float. You tilt your wings and slow your approach. Seraphine drifts beside you, silver scales catching the glare without flinching. Lyra sits steady between your shoulders, cloak drawn close, her hands resting lightly against the warm gold of your neck. The Heartfire within your chest hums steady, aligned like it is listening for something it already recognizes. Then you see him, not a silhouette on a cliff, not a shadow in a ravine, just a man walking across the open salt, as though he has nowhere else to be. His steps are unhurried. His coat hangs neat and dark against all that pale light. A cane taps softly with each stride, not for balance, you think, but for punctuation. You circle lazily, once above him, not predatory, not uncertain, simply unhurried. Below, he does not look up immediately. He finishes the step he is taking. The cane taps. The hem of his coat lifts once in the faint breeze and settles again. Then at last, he raises his head. His expression is warm, too warm, polite enough to be almost rude. Well, he says, lifting one hand to shade his eyes, as if the brightness is the only thing inconveniencing him. Imagine my surprise. You fold your wings and descend. The air is thin and sharp with reflected heat. The salt crust below gleams like crushed pearl. You land within conversational distance, close enough that the crust creaks under your weight, close enough that you can see the faint glint in his eyes as he watches you touch down. You step forward once, claws grinding softly into the salt. He does not step back. He holds his cane lightly in one hand. His other hand rests at his side, relaxed, almost friendly. You lower your head slightly, not in submission, but in focus. You took a scale, you say, mildly amused, as if you are recalling a small transaction that still seems faintly absurd. And you gave me a potion. That was the arrangement, yes. For the first time, he pauses. Not long, just the briefest space where the polite rhythm catches. Then his smile widens. Yes, he says gently. That was the arrangement. Lyra's gaze stays fixed on him. Seraphine's wings remain half-lifted, her posture calm but ready, like a winter lake holding stillness over depth. And yet, you add, letting your tone remain light, the arrangement appears to have altered. He tips his head, as though you have offered a clever observation. Does it? He asks. You breathe out once, and the warmth that curls from your nostrils is controlled, almost lazy. Oh, I think it does, you say. His eyes flick to your chest, toward the molten golden glow beneath your scales. Not hunger, curiosity, like a scholar noticing a footnote does not match the text. He taps his cane once against the salt. The sound is small, almost ordinary, but the light around him seems to dim by a fraction. Not the sun, not the sky, just the way the brightness holds itself close to the ground. A thin thread of shadow lifts from the salt near his shoes. It does not leap. It does not strike. It drifts forward, slow as breath, aimed not at your throat or your eyes, but toward the warm seam of glow beneath your scales. Lyra's hand presses lightly against your neck, steadying without restraining. Seraphine's silver light brightens by a whisper. You do not move. You allow the thread to reach you. It touches the molten glow. For an instant, it seems to hold like ink meeting water. Then it splits, not violently, not as if repelled, as if guided. The single strand fractures into multiple fine lines, each one bending at a slightly different angle, each one slipping along the glow, as though your light has edges the shadow did not expect. The vampire's expression does not change much, but something in his eyes sharpens. He watches the threads, delighted, as if he has been handed a puzzle. How curious, he murmurs. His voice stays warm, almost admiring. That angle is not natural. Seraphine tilts her head slightly. A small, precise motion. Lyra's eyes lift to his face, sudden and bright with attention. You tilt your own head, as if you do not know what he means. I have always had excellent posture, you say. His smile deepens, and for a heartbeat, he looks amused in a way that might have been charming, if it were not so interested. Of course you have, he says softly. The shadow threads fade, dissolving into the salt light. He taps his cane again. This time, the salt beneath him darkens in thin, measured lines, narrow shadows, threading outward across the plain like drawn geometry. Not a trap, not a wave, a framework. Lines intersect, angles form. A delicate lattice begins to rise from the salt crust between you and him, not enclosing him, but reaching toward you in careful increments. Let us, he says politely, adjust the angle properly. The lattice rises around you, elegant, thin, precise, dark lines stretching upward like a cage made by someone who values symmetry. You remain still. You do not flare your wings. You do not burn it away. You let it form. Lyra shifts behind you, cloak stirring in the breeze. Her voice is quiet against your back. Measured, she murmurs. Seraphine's silver glow spreads faintly over the salt near your claws, not freezing it, just cooling the reflected heat into something calmer. The lattice closes enough to test you. The molten golden glow beneath your scales does not brighten. It deepens, warmer, denser, then it hums, not loud, felt, a low vibration that runs through your ribs and into the salt beneath your feet, like the Heartfire has found a rhythm and decided to speak it aloud. For a moment, the lattice hums back. The vampire's eyes narrow by a fraction. interest, not fear. Then your glow shifts, subtle, layered. 1 frequency becomes 2, then 3, not louder, more complex. The lattice trembles. Its intersections slip, first a fraction early, then a fraction late, like a choir losing a shared breath. The shadow lines do not shatter. They desynchronize. Angles fail to meet. The structure loosens, and then it unravels gracefully, as though the pattern has simply decided it no longer agrees with itself. The salt plane brightens again as the shadow framework dissolves into nothing. Silence returns. You blink once, calm. Then you tilt your head toward the vampire. "I believe," you say mildly. Your geometry drifted. The vampire laughs, quiet, genuine, as if you have said something surprisingly entertaining. "Oh," he replies, "did it?" He lifts his cane slightly, as though considering another attempt. You do not give him the time. You draw in a controlled breath, not deep, not explosive. The Heartfire responds immediately, warm and steady in your chest. You lower your head and release a narrow arc of flame across the salt, not toward him, but into the space between you. The flame is precise, a bright ribbon of gold that kisses the surface and sweeps in a clean curve. The salt flashes. Heat spreads in a thin, radiant line, and whatever residual shadow pattern remains, those faint, half-formed measurements he was still holding, loses coherence entirely, as if your flame has rewritten the surface into something his shadow cannot grip. You lift your head again. The vampire does not flinch. He studies the glowing curve on the ground with quiet appreciation, as though admiring a well-drawn stroke. Then his gaze rises to you. His expression remains warm. His politeness remains too perfect. He says softly, almost conversationally, "That refinement was not yours alone." Seraphine's head tilts a fraction more, silver eyes narrowing with thought. Lyra looks up at him sharply now, as if the words have shifted something into place. You keep your tone light. "Are you suggesting," you ask, "that I have been improved?" His smile lingers, unreadable. "I am suggesting," he replies gently, "that someone was very careful." A faint breeze moves across the plain. The salt light shivers. The vampire inclines his head, just slightly. Not a bow of apology, not a flourish, a courtesy. Then the shadow gathers around him, like a cloak drawing closed. No smoke, no spectacle. One moment he stands there, cane in hand, polite interest still in his eyes. The next he is gone. The salt plain remains, bright, flat, unmoved. You hold still for a few breaths. The molten glow beneath your scales stays steady. Your Heartfire does not flicker. Satisfied, not triumphant, simply confirmed. Seraphine lowers her wings slowly. Lyra's hands rest against your back, her posture quiet but alert. For a moment, none of you speak. Then Seraphine breaks the silence first, not with a conclusion, but with a detail. He noticed the angle she says. Lyra nods once, eyes still on the empty stretch of salt where he stood. He said it was tempered, she adds softly. You huff once, a warm breath that curls into the bright air. He spoke as though I should understand, you say, as though it were obvious. Seraphine's expression remains calm, but her voice sharpens slightly with certainty. Scales do not temper themselves. Lyra's gaze lowers to the faint glowing curve your flame left behind, and reflections do not change without adjustment, she says. The words settle, not heavy, not frightening, just clear. You lift your head a little higher and let your wings settle fully at your sides. Well, you say, sarcasm returning like a familiar coat. I suppose one should always tip one's barber. Lyra's mouth curves faintly. Seraphine's eyes remain thoughtful. The three of you stand together on the endless salt, feeling the shape of a problem turning in your minds. Someone was careful. Someone knew enough to adjust a single piece and change how shadow behaves against your glow. You glance east, where the horizon remains bright and empty. The vampire is moving. The pattern is moving. And now you know you are not the only one capable of precision. We continue, you say simply. Lyra's hand presses once against your shoulder in agreement. Seraphine unfurls her wings, silver membranes catching the last slant of sun. You spread your own wings wide. Salt dust lifts in pale spirals. The first beat of your wings is strong but unhurried. You rise. The salt plain falls away beneath you, gleaming like a quiet mirror that refuses to give up its secrets. Far to the west, in a small village where the air is softer and the light is kinder, the barber shop is still. Wood and glass, warm lamplight beginning to gather. As afternoon leans toward evening, the barber stands at her counter, hands busy with ordinary work. A cloth folded, a blade wiped clean. Her movements are steady, practiced calm. Behind her, a mirror hangs on the wall. For most of the day, it reflects exactly what it should: chairs, shelves, the soft glow of the shop. But now, for the briefest moment, it catches something impossible. Not a face, not a vision, a flicker of molten gold at an angle that does not exist in the room. It splits once into fine strands, then fades. The barber pauses. She does not gasp. She does not drop the cloth. She simply lifts her eyes to the glass. One measured breath passes. Curiosity, quiet and sharp, settles in her expression. She reaches up and adjusts the mirror's angle slightly, not to chase the image, to improve the line of sight. Then she returns to her work, as if nothing has happened at all. Outside, the evening light deepens, and somewhere far above the horizon, three shapes cross the sky: gold, silver, and cloaked stillness between them, moving east.